What's up, all? Let me make sure my mic's working. Everything looks good on my end, but if you can't hear me, let me know. Thank you, everyone, for being here. SJG says he's going to call in. We'll see if he does that. That'll confuse the heck out of me, I'm sure. But we'll see what happens. So, yeah, you poor guys, you have to listen to my crappy elevator music coming in. Not this guy. I get to listen to the good stuff. So, jamming out a little here before I get started. So, thanks, everyone, for being here. I just got done doing the Patriot Hours live stream. We got shut off. I think he was having some problems with his router, but he's a great guy. I'm going to be doing his show probably Sunday. We're going to do part 2 talking about impeachment. He's really an awesome guy. Not only is his channel awesome, but he's trying to help me out with some behind-the-scenes stuff, like trying to get so I could have a call-in show, have a direct phone line, a number people could call in and ask questions. So we're going to be trying to work with stuff like that. So if you're here from there and you just met me today, thank you for being here. Alan, Milo's here, SJG, David, thank you all for being here. So, yeah, really appreciate everyone. So I thought we'd talk about impeachment. Why not, right? Open my Hangouts, says this guy. Yeah, SJG, I can't figure out how to get just you on Hangouts. So I'm on it. If you can figure out how to just call me. If I call you, it'll be you and Drone Tech. But I got it open on my phone right now, and it's also, my email's open too. So bear with us if I play with that a little. But I wouldn't mind taking a special guest today. That would be just fine with me. So we'll see if we get SJG on here or what he had. But if any of you would ever like to participate on the Normal America show, please just reach out to me via email. My email is rob.nor@gmail. So I'll put it in the chat. Reach out to me if you have any stories you want me to cover, if you'd like to be on the show. So we'll see if I can get SJG on here. Thank you, David. I am passionate about this stuff. That's why I do this. I haven't got any other motivation other than I think I have some interesting takes on things, and I'm kind of passionate about wanting to see our country do better. I think that we have a duty as people that have inherited the greatest country in the world to try to give that to the people that come after us. So I'm just trying to do what I can to get there. So thank you for all the... Thank you, Pam. I am feeling better. I'm still congested. You know how it is. I was sick. Then I went through the fever, and then I went through, now I'm draining. Like, my sinuses are draining. So I'm coughing a lot. Still getting my voice back, but that's never stopped me before. So let's just roll with it. So, yeah, impeachment today. So there's going to be a lot of rehashing of what I think the real impeachment story is. If you're new here, it might sound new to you. A lot of this isn't stuff that I hear from other people, but I also want to talk about some of the new stuff. I want to compare some articles from the New York Times today, talking about new revelations in the Bolton bombshell, and then any topics that you all feel like talking about, I'd love to talk about as well. So if I take a moment out, if SJG gets a hold of me, I might take a moment out to see if I can get him on here. But other than that, let's roll. So, yeah, for those of you who haven't seen, so there's today, it's really difficult to follow. And I'm not going to lie to you. I followed the House impeachment case way more than the Senate impeachment case. And the reason is it was just more interesting. There was more stuff going on. With the Senate impeachment, for example, the first couple days were all about the rules of how the Senate impeachment would be. And so far, there haven't been any new witnesses. Now, the Republicans, particularly Trump's defense team, have done a phenomenal job in the Senate trial, whereas I thought in the House the Republicans did an okay job. I thought they would have been better suited to have me on there than them. Thank you, Big Sky Crypto. Really appreciate it. So let's discuss what's going on right now to try to make one of the things I like to do here. I'm not trying to talk above people or anything like that. The people I respect most in the world are people that are working 9 to 5. They don't have time to sit down and watch hours of this impeachment stuff. So what's going on? Right now, there's a debate going on about whether or not there should be allowed to be new witnesses introduced, particularly John Bolton. Now, John Bolton was basically the person that was in charge of foreign policy for Trump there for a while, as far as dealing with Ukraine. And there's allegations, he's writing a book now that he's been let go. There's allegations that manuscripts from that book show that actually there was a quid pro quo. At least that's how the media is explaining it. Now, I read these articles and it does not say there was a quid pro quo. even if you read the original New York Times piece on Bolton, what it says is Trump suggested that maybe before this aid was sent that there should be some kind of revelation with Zelensky about possibly investigating corruption involving CrowdStrike, Burisma, etc. A suggestion isn't a crime, and this is something the Democrats have been playing with ever since the Mueller investigation. I talked about this at the time, and I didn't hear many people talking about it, but one of the things that was being discussed after the Mueller trial, or the Mueller investigation, was that Trump had obstructed justice because he had recommended or he had suggested that possibly they should get rid of Mueller for conflict of interest. That's not a crime. Saying, hey, maybe I'd like to do this, and then not doing it, is a crime. Period. That's not obstruction of justice. And if you remember, one of the things I said back then is, okay, then by the same standard, if Trump or his DOJ ever wants to investigate anyone connected to the Democrats, and the Democrats complain about that investigation, that would then mean they're obstructing justice. So according to the standard outlined by the Democrats and the media in the Mueller investigation, that by Trump suggesting he didn't like the fact that this fake investigation was set up that was accusing him of a bunch of crap that he didn't really do. I'll get there in a second. SGG, I don't see it, man. I don't see your invite. Let me check here. But yeah, your invite's not coming. Don't see it, SJG, honestly. I see, like, we got our link with me, you, and Drone Tech, but I don't see it suggesting an invite anywhere from you. But I'll keep moving forward here. Text me if you have to, and just let me know. I think you got my number, so if you have to text me, go ahead with that. But anyways, that's, where was I at? Let's see. Right. So anyways, what was going on is they were saying I said, look, if the Democrats complain about any investigation into them, or if the media complains about an investigation that they could be implicated in, then that would mean they're also guilty of obstructing justice. Isn't this entire impeachment case just the Democrats complaining about Trump attempting to investigate Democratic malfeasance, particularly with Biden? Isn't that exactly what's going on? Do you see the hypocrisy and the double standard? So Trump, where we know that all this information was made up, it came from the Steele dossier that the Democrats paid a foreign spy who then got the dirt directly from Kremlin officials, accusing Trump and his team of illegally conspiring with Russians, something that Trump knew was totally bogus from day one. The FBI then illegally used that information to spy on Trump's campaign and Trump as a president, over 17 times breaking protocol in order to do so. The media ran that story nonstop, 24/7. The FBI and all the intel agencies that we're supposed to believe are these great geniuses told us over and over again that it was the Kremlin's goal not necessarily to pick who to win the election, but to foster division in the United States. And yet the media, the Democrats, and the FBI took Kremlin disinformation that we now know was false and used it to spy on Trump and smear him for 3 years. They still use it to this day. Schiff's still talking about the allegations in the Steele dossier. Trump was saying, this is unfair, this is grotesque. And they said, nope, the fact that he said that or complained about the investigation was obstruction of justice. Now, when the shoe's on the other foot, and Trump seeks to investigate corruption from the Democrats, particularly Biden, what do the Democrats say? Not only can we not allow this investigation, but we have to impeach and investigate everyone who sought to investigate them. Now, this is how insane this impeachment process is. And I've said this over and over again. Let's assume, and this isn't beyond belief that this could happen. Let's assume that the Republicans win back the House and the Senate and maintain the presidency in 2020. Now, they win all of that. And then they decide to say, we're going to impeach every Democrat that voted to impeach Trump. We're going to impeach every Democrat that cheered for the Mueller investigation because they sought to use their powers as members of Congress to influence elections because they knew it would hurt Trump and the Republicans in 2018 and 2020. And so they sought to have these investigations to hurt their opponents. Okay? Now imagine that happens. The very first defense that the Democrats would offer would be, listen, there were credible allegations. We wanted to look into that. Now imagine that Trump and the Republicans say, oh, no. That's all debunked conspiracy theories. You're not allowed to talk about the allegations. That has nothing to do with our case of impeachment against you. It's very simple. Did you want to investigate Trump? Would that have helped you politically? Okay, you're guilty. You're impeached. That's what they're doing to Donald Trump. Now, the Democrats and the media would scream, this is absurd. There was reasons to want to investigate Trump. Doesn't matter. It's all debunked conspiracies, the Republicans say. Just conspiracy theories. Just debunk conspiracy theories. Big Sky says, in 2010 Fox Business Channel interview, Bolton stated that he would have no problem lying to the public if he thought it was necessary to protect national security. He has no credibility. Yeah, I don't know of that specific, I can't comment on that specific interview, but clearly John Bolton is someone who is a neocon. Look, if you're coming to this channel, you're not going to hear me just say, oh, Trump does no wrong. Far from it. I'll criticize Trump. One of the big criticisms I have of Trump is he came out and said, I only appoint the best people around me. That couldn't be further from the truth. Michael Cohen, Manafort, Bolton, Scaramucci, right? These weren't good people. Now, there's a lot to it. I could talk for hours about what's going on there. Because as an outsider coming in, the mess is already baked into the cake. The pool of people that are, quote, credible foreign policy experts are almost all corrupt. They're almost all on the side of aggression towards Russia, foreign regime change wars, etc. That's who these people are. If you pick people that aren't from that pool, then the media will go nuts. Oh, it's unqualified people that Trump's winning. He doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, his foreign policy is a disaster. The hard lesson Trump's learning, so what? Who cares what they say? Who cares what the foreign policy experts say? They've been wrong almost every decision they've had since 2002, if not before then. The only reason I say since 2002 is that's when I started paying attention, because I was a teenager. That's the nonsense we're dealing with. John Bolton is the epitome of that. Name one foreign policy decision John Bolton's been right on. He's a neocon. Every country, his solution's like, we should go to war. Yeah, let's go to war. I criticized the appointment of Bolton when it first happened. Now, Bolton was on Fox News all the time before then, kissing Trump's butt, because he knows how it works. Trump's then like, oh, this guy defends me. Yeah, I'll appoint him. And then as soon as he's in there, it's just another snake in the grass, another swamp creature that's trying to get Trump to go against his gut feeling, which is, why are we involved in all of these disastrous Middle Eastern wars? Why are we involved with constant aggression towards Russia? But John Bolton's pushing that. So what happens? Trump finally gets fed up and realizes, look, this is nonsense. So he kicks Bolton to the curb, and what's Bolton immediately start doing? Just like Cohen, just like Scaramucci. Well, now that they're no longer there to influence Trump, now they'll do what they can. Oh, when I was around Trump, he was corrupt, he was terrible, and they'll write tell-all books, they'll get rich. The same John Bolton that in 2003, 2004, and beyond, that all my Democrat friends were complaining about. He's a neocon, he's a warmonger, don't trust him. Now, and the media was doing that, and the Democrats were doing it. Now they're like, oh, John Bolton, what a trustworthy guy. He's writing a book. We have to take the allegations in it seriously. That's what's going on. SJG, if you're still out there, I still haven't got a notification. You got my phone number, though, so feel free to text or call me, and we'll see what's going on. But yeah, that's what we're dealing with John Bolton. So now today, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, we went through both sides, got to make their arguments. The Republican side, basically Trump's defense team, did a phenomenal job, led by Pam Bondi, a guy named Sapoli, you have Jay Sekulow, you have Alan Dershowitz. They did a phenomenal job. If you've watched my channel for a while, you heard me complain about the Republicans dropping the ball in the House. So in the impeachment hearing in the House, the Republicans made all sorts of mistakes, which I've talked about ad nauseum. Maybe I'll get into a little more later. But they didn't make arguments as to what the corruption between the Bidens was. They didn't make arguments about the Ukrainian election interference. Remember, if there was possible corruption with Joe and Hunter Biden, if there was a possibility that Ukraine interfered in our 2016 election, then there is zero case for impeaching Trump for investigating that. In fact, not only is it legitimate for Trump to want to investigate that, it should be Trump's duty to investigate that. It absolutely should be. Yet now Bolton at the last minute, and isn't it funny? Remember the story. So for Bolton to be able to release a book, it has to be reviewed. So it goes through the National Security Council. Who's the lawyer in charge of reviewing the manuscript? Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's brother. Vindman, one of the biggest witnesses against Trump in testimony, a smug little, I won't even say it, call me Lieutenant Colonel, has to show up in his uniform. A guy who was offered the head military position of the Ukraine 4 times by his own admission. A guy who most likely is the person who leaked details to the so-called whistleblower. Now his brother's the one deciding, oh, is Bolton's book okay? And then mysteriously it goes to that office, the office of Vindman's brother, and now there are leaks to the New York Times. And then mysteriously, instead of leaking all of the information at once, the New York Times drags it out as long as possible. Oh, now there's even more revelations in the Bolton's book after it came out that they're not going to have the votes to call more witnesses. Oh, now Mitt Romney will doubly be concerned. Please. So the original story was Bolton said that there was a suggestion of tying aid to possible investigation into Biden's, etc. A suggestion's not a crime, as I outlined. And even if that is the case, we have no proof that Bolton's word's true, and Bolton could have been subpoenaed in the House trial, but they wanted to get through it fast, so they didn't do it. Yeah, there is some weird stuff going on with the chat and everything. Strange. Every time you talk about the whistleblower, huh? But that's where we're at, so they don't have the votes. Even Murkowski came out and said she's not going to vote for it. That puts it at 51, basically Republicans guaranteed to vote no. Now, even if it was a 50-50 split, then Roberts would have to get involved, which all indications were he wouldn't get involved, which would mean that there would still be no witnesses. But with 51 Republicans voting against witnesses, that proves, or that would mean that Roberts won't get involved and there just won't be witnesses, which means that the arguments are basically done and now they'll vote whether to acquit or to remove Trump from office. If they're voting not to have more witnesses, then clearly they would vote to acquit. So what happens? The impartial, right? The newspaper of record, the Gray Lady, the standard of journalism, the New York Times. Oh, they come out with another bombshell as soon as it turns out that the senators are going to vote no. Now the senators will be, now that the new information about Bolton's come out, does that change your calculus? This is garbage. There is no free press in this country. The best you'll get is people like me, people like Patriot Hour, Drone Tech, SJG, even people on the left that are independent creators. The mainstream media is a joke. They do not hold truth to power like they claim. They bury the truth for the powerful. That's what they do. They're propagandists. That's what the New York Times is doing right now as we speak. That's what's going on. And the Republicans, I secretly believe they're smarter than they let on. I think that many of these Republicans are basically still never Trumpers. But if not, and they think, well, we got to try to play a game fairly, there is no fair game anymore. You could literally ask the Democrats right now, write down the name of every witness you want, and we'll give them to you in the next week. Every single one you might want, write them down. They could give them all those witnesses, and at the end of the week, the Democrats would say, this is a sham. We wanted more witnesses. Everything that these establishment Democrats push for, that's the way it is. Go ahead. They'll tell you everything that's wrong with inner city communities is because of slavery. They'll tell you that, right? If we just had reparations, it would solve everything. I've asked the people that advocate this. Give me a dollar amount. What is it? $10 trillion, we'll say. If we give inner cities, if we give every person who had a slave as an ancestor $10 trillion, so we divvied it up amongst all of them, would that solve the problems? I guarantee the day after that $10 trillion was given, even though it would bankrupt the nation, even though it would lead to all sorts of problems, the first time there was a problem in the inner city, after $10 trillion was given to them, the very next day, the same people right now advocating for reparations would go, well, it wasn't enough. It's still because of slavery. The same people that are like, we need more illegal immigrants, we need more immigration, more. We shouldn't block anyone out. Ask them, what's the number? How many people can we leave in before we could say, oh, okay, enough's enough? 1 billion? 2 billion? 3 billion? It will never be enough. If they were honest and gave you an answer, as soon as you said, okay, that's 1 billion people, now our country's going to collapse. It can't hold 1 billion people, but there we go. We just accepted 1 billion. They'd say, what about that next person? You ask them, what guns do we need to give up? We'll compromise with. What guns do we need to give up to make things safe? Just assault weapons. The day you got rid of whatever they define as assault weapons, the very next day they'd be like, it's not enough. We need to get rid of more. Give them the Green New Deal. Give the government the power over the entire energy sector. The next day they'll be like, it's not enough. We need more power. We need more control over things. That's what they do. They will never be happy. Whatever, they have a 98% control over all of the flow of information that comes from mainstream sources. Academia, it's getting worse. 95% and going up in some schools. The administration, the faculty, all establishment Democrats. The entertainment industry, almost entirely establishment Democrat. Silicon Valley, the Jack Dorseys of the world, the Zuckerbergs of the world, the Cooks of the world, almost all exclusively establishment Democrat. The mainstream media, 95% of coverage about Trump is negative. It's not enough for them. They have to censor you. They need total control. That's what they're after. The only fair trial to the Democrats would be this. They get to call every witness they want for as long as they want, years if necessary. The Republicans get to call no witnesses. The Republicans don't get to ask questions. The Democrats could ask whatever they want. Democrats could withhold any evidence or witnesses they want, and that's not evidence of any kind of corruption. And they could demand that anytime Republicans object to any piece of evidence or anybody testifying that that's proof of corruption, only then would they say, oh, okay, that's fair. Everything. It's the same crap with the Kavanaugh hearing. The exact same crap. Were they ever going to be satisfied? They know what they did. Feinstein sat on Christine Blasey Ford's allegations for months. Then went against Blasey Ford's wishes and unloaded her name publicly. So all the supposed harassment that Christine Blasey Ford got, you can blame Dianne Feinstein for that. She didn't care about this alleged victim. She used her as a political pawn. They waited until the eve of the vote, and then they threw the Hail Mary up because they thought and they know that they could use the mainstream media and academia and the entertainment industry in Silicon Valley to shape the narrative to say, see how evil the Republicans are? They're not even concerned that a rapist is going to be put in the Supreme Court. When they knew damn well they had months that the FBI could have done a legitimate investigation. But they held it out to the last minute, hoping they would win enough Senate seats in 2018 to be able to reject Kavanaugh. It's the same crap here. They know they don't have the votes to remove. Despite the rhinos in the Republican Party, the establishments in the Republican Party that want to see Trump gone. So, they're trying to call the process unfair and drag it out as long as possible. This was a mistake that the Republicans in the House made. If the Republicans in the House were arguing more like Pam Bondi, we'd be in a very different place right now. Because the mistake the Republicans in the House made, and trust me, I talked about this from day one. I watched almost every single minute of the impeachment hearings in the House. I haven't done near that in the Senate, I'll admit. But I was saying from day one, the Republicans are making a huge mistake. I don't care if it was a quid pro quo. I don't care at all. The Democrats and the media have already admitted quid pro quos are okay. That's what Biden did, remember? That's what Obama did. They admitted to a quid pro quo. No impeachment there. It was, what is the intent behind the quid pro quo? Or was the quid pro quo to fight corruption, would be another way of putting it. So the Republicans should have said, yes, the Bidens were corrupt. Yes, Ukraine tried to interfere in the 2016 election. The evidence is overwhelming that we should at least have an investigation into both of those things. Overwhelming evidence. Without a doubt. Instead, the Republicans argued, oh, no, it wasn't a quid pro quo. Maybe it wasn't. But what did I say what happened? I was like, if that's the basket you're going to put your eggs in, then from now till the day of the election, the Democrats will say, oh, we got another super secret surprise witness who heard someone that knows Trump say that he heard one of Trump's associates say to someone else that they heard someone say that Trump wanted a quid pro quo. Now all the media is going to go, now another example, proof of the quid pro quo. SJG, if you want later tonight, I can get in touch with you and maybe we could do some. I got a thing, but a party thing, but I'll be back after like 10, 11 p.m. But yeah, honestly, I can show you on my Hangouts. It's not showing anything. I don't know. It's strange. But, yeah, so Murkowski and Alexander and all them coming out. Look, I say this all the time. Before they kill Trump, they have to kill his name. Like that scene in Gladiator. What does that mean? As corrupt as many of these rhinos and establishment Republicans are, they are also, they know they can't continue their power grab and their corruption unless they're got enough votes that they can at least, without raising too many eyebrows, win an election. So if Murkowski would have voted 4 witnesses, there would have been a primary against her. People would have been furious. I don't know when she's up for re-election. So what she was waiting for, what was Murkowski waiting for? What was Romney and Alexander, what are they all waiting for? Well, they're hoping and they're begging and praying that the media could convince enough people that witnesses are a good idea so then they could rightfully go along with that and not look too bad. Make no mistake about it, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, Alexander, Murkowski, if for whatever reason Trump does something, and 80% of the country gets against him and wants him removed, they would be the first ones like, yes, remove Trump. Yep, remove him. They don't want him there. They never did. They would have rather had Hillary Clinton. That's because it's more than just a left-right thing. It's an establishment versus non-establishment. You think Jeff Flake would have rather had Trump than Hillary Clinton? You think John McCain would have rather had Trump than Hillary Clinton or Mitt Romney? Of course not. At the establishment level, at the highest levels, the Republicans, the McCains, the Flakes, the Romneys, they're no different than the Clintons. At all. They'll give you some superficial stuff that they don't care about to argue with. Yeah, abortion, gay rights. They don't care at all. They don't. What do they care about? Getting rich. Keeping the money train going, keeping the military-industrial complex going, having these foreign regime change wars, bailing out bankers. That's what they care about. They care about maintaining power. They're just as corrupt as Clinton. They can't call out Clinton because then Clinton would call out their corruption. And so all they have to do is keep all potential outsiders out. Trump represented that potential outsider. That's why they want him out. So if you're in the district of Murkowski or Collins or Romney or Alexander, vote them out. Don't let them go, oh no, at the end I voted against witnesses. Garbage. Only because they realized they couldn't get enough of the pressure that they wanted. They couldn't get enough of the popular support that they wanted. But they wanted to vote to allow witnesses. They wanted to vote to remove Trump. Make no mistake about it. That's what they want to do. They just have to keep their phony baloney jobs. And they know they would be voted out if they did it. Am I joining a third party? No. I'm still Republican. Better to change within than from without would be my... So, let's go to let's see what we got here. So I'm going to go through the New York Times story here. Try to anyways. Whoop! Shrink my head here. We're going to go through this story, which is going to link to another New York Times story, which is the one I'm more interested in. But this is from 51 minutes ago by everybody's favorite shill, Maggie Haberman. says, more than 2 months before he asked Ukraine's president to investigate his political opponents, President Trump directed John R. Bolton, then his national security advisor, to help with his pressure campaign to extract damaging information on Democrats from Ukrainian officials, according to an unpublished manuscript by Mr. Bolton. Mr. Trump gave the instruction, Mr. Bolton wrote, during an Oval Office conversation in early May that included the acting White House Chief of Staff Mulvaney, the president's personal lawyer Giuliani, and the White House counsel Pat Cipollone, who is now leading the president's impeachment defense. Mr. Trump told Mr. Bolton to call Zelensky, who had recently won an election as president of the Ukraine, to ensure Mr. Zelensky would meet with Mr. Giuliani, who was planning a trip to Ukraine to discuss investigations that the president saw in Mr. Bolton's account. Mr. Bolton never made the call, he wrote. The previously undisclosed directive that Mr. Bolton describes would be the earliest known instance of Mr. Trump seeking to harness the power of the United States government to advance his pressure campaign against Ukraine, as he later did on July call with Mr. Zelensky that triggered the whistleblower complaint and impeachment proceedings. House Democrats have accused him of abusing his authority and are arguing the case before the Senate impeachment trial of Trump, whose lawyers have said he did nothing wrong. The account in Bolton's manuscript portrays the most senior White House advisors as early witnesses in the effort they've sought to distance the president from. And disclosure of the meeting underscores the kind of information Democrats were looking for in seeking testimony from his top advisors in their impeachment investigation, including Bolton and Mulvaney, only to be blocked by the White House. Trump denies. Skip ahead here a little. Neither Mr. Bolton nor a representative from Mulvaney responded. Mr. Bolton described a roughly 10-minute conversation and drafts his book, a memoir of his time as national security advisor that is to go on sale in March. Over several pages, Mr. Bolton laid out Mr. Trump's fixation on Ukraine and the president's belief, based on a mix of scattershot events, assertions, and outright conspiracy theories, that Ukraine tried to undermine his chances of winning the 2016 election. Okay, so here's where I'm going to stop for a minute. So what has Bolton said? Look, Bolton has reason to lie. Even what Bolton says here isn't a crime. How early again, think of this. At what point did Trump first suggest this? Before Joe Biden was running? So does this mean that you are now immune from any sort of investigation if you run for office? Why is there allowed to be an investigation of Trump? There was a crossfire hurricane through the Obama administration where they were contacting foreign countries, doing everything they could to look into Trump and everyone connected to him. Why isn't that considered looking for information to undermine his opponents to help his chances in 2016? No one said that about Obama. Why was that allowed? Why is it okay for the Democrats right now, leading into the 2020 election, to have an investigation into Trump in order to undermine him to help them in the 2020 election? Why is that legitimate? What Bolton's even alleging here, again, there's no reason to believe him. He publicly said on television at the time before he was fired that there was nothing wrong with Trump's call. He didn't use a quid pro quo, etc. Now that he's been fired, could it be possible that he's trying to sell books? Could it be possible that a member of the deep state that's upset that Trump didn't go along with his foreign regime change wars is now trying to get back at him? But even if we take Bolton at his word, okay. Does this say anything about a quid pro quo? No. It says the allegation here is Trump supposedly said he wanted Zelensky to meet with Giuliani. Okay. How is that a crime? Remember, 3 Democratic senators wrote a letter to Zelensky saying, we want you to continue to work with Mueller. We want you to give evidence of Trump crimes to Mueller. We've helped your country out, and if you don't do that, it'd be a real shame, and maybe we'd stop helping your country. That's what 3 Democratic senators did, Leahy, Durbin, and Menendez. But that's okay. There's no impeachment trial of them. You see how this is selectively applied? Now, I want to focus on this last line here. The president's belief based on a mix of scattershot events, assertions, and outright conspiracy theories. When I click outright conspiracy theories, here's the article that comes up. Okay? This is from October. That's New York Times. Davey Alba, October 29th, 2019. Debunking 4 viral rumors about the Bidens in Ukraine. Let's just start. Number 1. Why was Ukraine's top prosecutor fired? The allegation at the heart of the controversy is that while Mr. Biden was vice president, he pushed to have Ukraine's top prosecutor removed for investigating a company connected to his son Hunter, the Ukrainian natural gas firm Burisma. Videos pushing this theory began appearing on Twitter in late September and early October and have been viewed by tens of millions of times. Mr. Trump's campaign has also asserted the claim in ads on Facebook. Now, notice they call this a theory. They're trying to dog whistle to the word conspiracy theory here. It's just a theory. Millions of people have seen this theory. What is it that it says? That while Mr. Biden was vice president, he pushed to have Ukraine's top prosecutor removed for investigating a company connected to his son, the firm Burisma. Well, we know that it's true that, through Biden's own words, he did push to have that prosecutor fired. We absolutely know that. Period. Now, do you think if it was Trump, in fact, we don't even have to do this thought experiment. The media is convinced because they're just the mouthpieces of the Democratic Party. So the New York Times, for example, is convinced, and that's who we're reading right here. They're convinced that Trump issued a quid pro quo. Now, they're admitting they know that Biden also issued a quid pro quo that was backed by Obama. They're saying it's just a theory that Biden's quid pro quo was to benefit him or his son. But at the same time, they're absolutely convinced with zero evidence that Trump's quid pro quo must have just been to personally benefit himself. Do you see the insanity here? Vice President Biden was overseeing American policy towards Ukraine at the time, and he did push for the removal of the country's top prosecutor, who was seen as corrupt or ineffectual by the United States and Western European governments. Okay. So let's take that claim for a minute. This is one of the claims that upsets me to no end. It's okay that Biden wanted this quid pro quo and wanted the prosecutor looking into his son's company fired. It's perfectly fine. Why? Because some leaders of some other countries also wanted that person fired. That is irrelevant. So does that mean if Boris Johnson says, let's say there's a prosecutor looking into Trump's son. If Boris Johnson comes out and says, yeah, I don't like that prosecutor, I think he's corrupt. Okay, now Trump's justified in firing him? If the leader of India comes out and said, I don't like Bob Mueller, I think he's corrupt. And then Boris Johnson was like, yeah, I agree, Bob Mueller's corrupt. And the leader of Ireland's like, yep, Bob Mueller, corrupt. Okay, then Trump was allowed to fire Bob Mueller, right? You think the Democrats in the media would have said, makes sense? 3 different world leaders said Mueller was corrupt. Yep. Of course not. Do you know how I know the media wouldn't say that? Do you remember a man by the name of James Comey? I remember when all the Republicans wanted James Comey fired. All of them. Because they said he was terrible at his job. And at the same time, you know who else wanted him fired? All of the Democrats said he was corrupt and he cost Hillary the election. So we had Republicans and Democrats that said, we want Comey out of here. So when Trump then gets a letter recommending that Comey be fired from Rod Rosenstein, and Trump fires Comey, did the Democrats in the media say, well, fair enough, all the Democrats said Comey did a terrible job? No! They said, oh, we need an investigation to make sure Trump didn't fire Comey for personal reasons. Why couldn't have Trump just came out and said, look, all these people wanted him fired. I fired him. Why is the standard different? When Biden and Obama did it, all of a sudden, well, a couple world leaders said it was okay, so therefore it's good. World leaders that are also part of the Obama coalition, that are also connected to George Soros, like who are these Western leaders that they're talking about? Like the IMF, the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde. She's one of the people that came out and recommended firing Victor Shokin. Who's Christine Lagarde? Well, in addition to being corrupt and a globalist that's trying to use financial banks to devastate poor people around the world, she also happened to attend George Soros' wedding. Huh, isn't that odd? But that's perfectly fine. As long as a George Soros ally or two said that we wanted to fire Shokin, then that proves that it's no problem. They should have been fired. It's absolute insanity. It goes on. There is no evidence he did so, in other words, that Joe Biden got Shokin fired, to benefit his son Hunter Biden or the oligarch who owns Burisma Zlochevsky. What is the evidence that Trump wanted Zelensky to look into this to benefit himself? Show me the evidence. What's the evidence? There is none. There's no evidence. This is the trick they're playing because they understand that most people don't have the time to go through all this. It's confusing. Look, remember again, who are the people that I like most in life? My parents, my in-laws, all my friends and family around here in rural Pennsylvania. They work with their hands. They're doing 9 to 5s. No one's got that much money. Most people are paycheck to paycheck. They don't have time to sit down and watch hours upon hours of impeachment testimony or to read article after article about what's going on. It's just beaten to their head nonstop. Trump's guilty, Trump's guilty, Trump's guilty, Trump's guilty, Trump's guilty. Look at the clever trick they're employing here. They're saying, well, there's no proof that Biden's quid pro quo was for anything. We need proof before we'd make those claims. Show me once where there's proof that Trump talked to Zelensky in order to benefit himself in the 2020 election. Anywhere. There's not. They just assume. Their assumption is, well, if it theoretically could benefit Trump, then that must have been the reason. Well, why isn't that same standard applied to Biden and Obama? Let me ask you. This is the absurdity that they're allowed to play with over and over again, and no one calls them out. Even with the Russia garbage, this is what they were doing, right? They say trying to get information or dirt on your opponent from a foreign country or a foreign agent is election interference. That's what they say. Theoretically, it could be. Okay, fair enough. But couldn't it also be an election interference to have a foreign agent or government bury an investigation that could harm you in an election? In other words, let's take the word foreign out of it. If I'm trying to influence an election or interfere in an election, there are several things I could do. One of those things could be to get dirt about my opponent. Okay. One of those things could be to use my influence to make sure dirt about me doesn't come to light. That's equally interfering in the election and influencing the election. Now, going into the 2016 election, so we're in 2015, we got this big election coming up. The Democrats' star, Hillary Clinton's going to be running for president. We're coming off a scandal-free administration, supposedly, that Hillary was part of. How bad do you think it would have looked that the vice president and Obama, who's supposedly scandal-free, right? At the exact same time, they're exerting pressure on Ukraine because they think the leader of this gas company, Zlochevsky, is corrupt. At the same time, they're pressuring Ukraine to deal with Zlochevsky. Hunter Biden's taking $83,000 a month from Zlochevsky by being on the board of directors of his gas company. And remember, it's not as if the claim that Biden and Obama, this isn't me, this isn't Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity, this is Biden and Obama and their administration saying Zlochevsky is guilty, that he's corrupt, that he was a pro-Russian oligarch. It wasn't that he was corrupt, but his gas company was on the up and up. Even the witnesses like George Kent, Fiona Hill, all of them admitted. The thing that Zlochevsky was accused of doing that made him corrupt was he took a bunch of gas interests that belonged to the people of the Ukraine, corruptly got it, and made billions of dollars through his company, Burisma. So Burisma is at the heart of the corruption that supposedly Biden and Obama are fighting. Yet Hunter Biden's on the board of directors of that company. Now, if that story became national and that a prosecutor was actually looking at that company and possibly at Hunter Biden going into the 2016 election, don't you think that could have influenced some votes? So there is exactly as much proof, exactly the exact same amount of proof that Biden and Obama's quid pro quo was to help them in the 2016 election, as there is that Trump's supposed quid pro quo, that we don't even know is a quid pro quo, was to help him in the 2020 election. Even as someone like me that doesn't care for Obama and Biden, I can't tell you definitively that's what their quid pro quo was about. But I can tell you this, there's more than enough smoke to have an investigation. And if there's reason to have an investigation, then Trump did nothing wrong. It's that simple. I don't know how many times I have to say this, and I don't know why this isn't repeated by people that have a bigger voice than me over and over. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, if you're a Bush, you're a Clinton, you're a Trump, you're a Biden. I don't care. If you're in the executive branch and you're threatening a country with our tax dollars to fire a prosecutor who's looking into a company that your family member happens to be on the board of directors of, you should be investigated. I don't care what Rachel Maddow says. I don't care what Christine Lagarde at the IMF says. I don't care what European leaders say. I don't care at all. Our government has a responsibility to make sure our tax money isn't being used for illegal blackmailing to make sure that some family member of the executive branch isn't investigated for potential crimes. Okay. I got you, SJG. I know I don't read comments as much as I should. Do I think Trump wants the Dems to go balls deep in calling for witnesses, pretend he doesn't want them, and then give them the okay to testify, only to have their testimony exonerate Trump? No. I think Trump would, because the problem is, what's John Bolton going to say? Do you trust John Bolton to be on the up and up? I don't think Trump wanted Victor Sondland to testify, even though that ended up not harming Trump. So Bolton's testimony probably wouldn't harm Trump that much, but I think if Trump was a dictator and got to say exactly what would happen here, he would say, I want Biden to testify, I want Hunter Biden to testify, I want Victor Shokin to testify, I want Lutsenko to testify, I want Obama to testify, but he wouldn't have John Bolton. Now, it could be, is there a conspiracy that Trump secretly wants the vote for witnesses so that potentially he can call Biden and what have? Maybe, but the problem with that is all the spineless rhinos won't call Biden in the first place. The number one witness, by the way, before you call Hunter or Joe Biden, by the way, here's the order of witnesses. Hunter Biden, number 3. Number 2 is a combo. Joe Biden and Barack Obama. They're the ones who issued the quid pro quo. I'm less interested in the crimes of Hunter Biden than I am the potential misuse of $1 billion of our tax dollars by Obama and Joe Biden to fire a prosecutor looking into Hunter Biden. That's the real thing that needs to investigate. And the number one witness that should be called is Victor Shokin, the fired prosecutor, who has evidences and testified under a court of law over and over again that he was fired for looking into Joe Biden's son. But the Republicans, again, my buddy John Jacobs that always watches my show, a great supporter of mine. You know, he was on me on my last live stream Tuesday night because I was complaining about the Republicans' defense of Trump. And he says, but you haven't watched Pam Bondi. No, I agree. Pam Bondi and in the Senate, there has been a good job of defending Trump. But those aren't the people we elected, are they? That's Trump's defense team. What about the senators in the House of Representatives? The Congress people in the House? They're the ones we voted for. They're the ones that should be representing me against this coup against Donald Trump. But instead, I have to wait until Trump's legal defense team makes these arguments? Me, some fat guy in a chair, making the arguments they were making 3-4 weeks ago, but it couldn't be made by the representatives in Congress? Again, what is your congressperson doing right now? Are they defending against this coup? Or did they just vote against it and say, hey, I'm doing all I can? Because if they just voted against it and they're not out there every day fighting against this coup, then you should run against them. That's what I'm going to do. If they can't be there to protect our country when the stakes are highest, then what do I care what they're going to do on an off year? They have no reason to be there. So let's go on with this article. In 2014, Hunter joined the board of Burisma, which was then mired in a corruption scandal. Authorities in Ukraine, Britain, and the United States opened investigations into the company. Mr. Jolchevsky has also been accused of marshaling government contracts to companies he owned and embezzling public money. Exactly what I said. At the time of his board appointment, the younger Mr. Biden had just been discharged for the Navy Reserve for drug use. He had no apparent experience in Ukraine or natural gas, and while accepting the board position was legal, it reportedly raised eyebrows in the Obama administration. The board position was lucrative. He received payments that reached up to $50,000 a month. He averaged $83,000 a month. I don't know why I know that more than the New York Times, but I wonder. A year later, Victor Shokin became Ukraine's prosecutor general, a job similar to the attorney general in the United States. He vowed to keep investigating Burisma amid an international push to root out corruption in Ukraine. But the investigation went dormant under Mr. Shokin. In the fall of 2015, Joe Biden joined the chorus of Western officials calling for Shokin's ouster. The next March, Shokin was fired. A subsequent prosecutor cleared Zolchevsky. Now let's read what the New York Times just wrote here. Let's start with this last sentence. A prosecutor cleared Zolchevsky. let's go back to what they said. 2014, Hunter joined Burisma, which was mired in a corruption scandal. Authorities in Ukraine, Britain, and the United States had opened investigations into the company's operations. Zlochevsky had been accused of marshaling government contracts to companies he owned and embezzling public money. A prosecutor, after Shokin left, cleared Zlochevsky. Now, according to the New York Times then, they said the United States, other European countries, the Ukraine itself, all accused Zlochevsky of corruption. Biden did it publicly, so did Obama. And they were all wrong, apparently, because the prosecutor that was basically handpicked by the Obama administration ended up finding Zlochevsky to be innocent. Now, what does this say? Shokin became the prosecutor general. He vowed to keep investigating Burisma and Zlochevsky, but the investigation went dormant. Joe Biden and a chorus of Western officials called for Shokin's ouster because the investigation went dormant. So Shokin was this corrupt guy because he didn't find Zlochevsky guilty, is what they're saying. And then they just put one little sentence, oh, by the way, the new prosecutor also cleared Zlochevsky. Now go back and look at exactly what's going on. That's bad enough, right? Just their own writings. Oh, there's all this evidence against Zlochevsky for being corrupt. And the only reason he's not getting brought down is because the investigation's dormant under Shokin, but the new prosecutor cleared him. Huh? Doesn't that strike you as a little odd? Now remember, the official story is it was okay for Biden and Obama to issue a quid pro quo to get rid of Viktor Shokin. Why? Because he was so corrupt, he wasn't going after corrupt oligarchs like Zlochevsky. And if only they got that corruption out of the prosecutorial office, then corrupt people like Zlochevsky would be brought to account. And so, even though Congress voted to send this aid to the Ukraine, we didn't want to send the aid to a country with corrupt prosecutors that were refusing to take down Zlochevsky. Isn't that what the Democrats and Biden and Obama said? Isn't that their justification for this quid pro quo? All of these, remember? The IMF, Christine Lagarde at the IMF, all these Western European leaders, Obama, Biden, they're all in a unanimous chorus of fire Viktor Shokin. He's corrupt and he won't investigate Zlochevsky. Remember? Don't give that country money until this corrupt prosecutor's fired, right? That's their defense. Then why haven't I heard, can anyone provide me any evidence whatsoever? Because remember, what happened? What did Biden say? Fire him or you're not getting this $1 billion. They were apprehensive. They said, you're not the boss. Obama is. He said, call him. I'm leaving in 6 hours. And wouldn't you know, they fired the son of a bitch. That's Joe Biden's own words. They didn't want to fire him. Once they were pressured, they did fire him. Okay, then the $1 billion went. Now, don't you think if it was so important to fire a prosecutor because he wouldn't investigate Zlochevsky, that's why they got rid of Shokin, because the investigation was dormant. So let's assume that was the motivation for Biden and Obama. And all these Western leaders. Don't give them that money until they start investigating Zlochevsky. So they fire Shokin, we give the $1 billion, and the new prosecutor clears Zlochevsky. Now, if that was the motivation, don't you think there would be evidence of Obama, of Biden, of all these Western leaders in Europe that they're talking about, of Christine Lagarde at the IMF? Wouldn't they all have came out and said, hey, wait a minute, there's still corruption in the Ukraine. We just gave them this $1 billion to end corruption, and they didn't. They got rid of one prosecutor and brought in another who did the exact same thing. That's according to their narrative, right? So can someone please show me an article where Joe Biden or Barack Obama or any of the Democrats that agreed with them or any of these Western European allied leaders, can anyone show me one article where people were saying, wow, it was a mistake to send that $1 billion because they still left Zlochevsky off the hook? Can anyone show me one article that says that? These people were infuriated. You can't send $1 billion, even if it was voted on by Congress. You can't send it because that country's corrupt and won't prosecute Zlochevsky. So we send the $1 billion and they continue to be corrupt and not prosecute Zlochevsky. Yeah, every one of those people, when they have spoken publicly, what did they do? Criticize Trump for not wanting to send aid to the Ukraine. Now, if I was Joe Biden and I was so adamant that $1 billion didn't go to a country that had a corrupt prosecutor that left Zlochevsky off the hook, and then I was made a fool of by going to bat and issuing a quid pro quo to get that guy fired, and the next guy ended up being the exact same, I would have applauded Trump, saying, no, I'm questioning sending this aid. If I was Biden, I would have said, damn right. We sent him $1 billion. It was a huge mistake. They continue to be corrupt. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on, opposite, right? Fool me once, shame on you. But we're not going to get fooled again. But instead, it was the exact opposite. Now, the New York Times aren't going to tell you that, are you? Yeah, I'm going to try, Beth, to raise money. I'm on a little bit of a roll here. I'm still trying to read comments, though. Now, that's just... Did I have to bring one article to show you that? Did I have to bring one article to rebut this? No, this is just common sense. Read their own article. If you read it with a critical eye, there's all this evidence of corruption. And the Bidens and Obama and all these Western European leaders thought that this Zlochevsky guy was corrupt. All sorts of allegations. And it was just this Shokin guy needed to get out of there. Oh, and then after Shokin was gone, they found Zlochevsky innocent. And that doesn't raise an eyebrow? The New York Times isn't like, wait, what? So is the prosecutor that found Zlochevsky corrupt? Or was the United States and Biden and Obama and all these Western European leaders, were they all mistaken? Because remember, they're accusing the head prosecutor, basically the attorney general of the Ukraine, they're accusing him of corruption. Their evidence is you won't go after this Zlochevsky guy. So either the new prosecutor was corrupt, or all the people that accused Shokin of being corrupt were themselves wrong, because it turns out Zlochevsky was innocent. That's the only two possibilities. Yet no one talks about that. If you bring it up, it's just, remember, why are we on this? What did the New York Times say? Outright conspiracy theory. It's an outright conspiracy theory to question this. Now I will bring up some more proof. Let's go back to this section. A year later, Viktor Shokin became Ukraine's prosecutor general, a job similar to the attorney general in the United States. He vowed to investigate Burisma, but the investigation went dormant under Mr. Shokin. In the fall of 2015, Joe Biden joined a chorus of Western officials calling for Mr. Shokin's ouster. The next March, Mr. Shokin was fired. Okay, so they're claiming Shokin, it was dormant. What does dormant mean? Nothing was going on in the investigation. Who was the investigation into? Burisma and its owner, Zlochevsky, right? Okay. This is from the official Ukrainian news agency. April 2nd, 2016. You ready? Court seizes property of ex-minister Zlochevsky in Ukraine. The movable and immovable property of former Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Mykola Zlochevsky, in Ukraine has been seized, according to the press service of the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine. Who's the Prosecutor General? Viktor Shokin. Wait, what did this just say? The property of Zlochevsky was seized by Shokin's office. Now, wait a minute. I thought the investigation was dormant. If it's dormant, why are they seizing the property of the corrupt person running it? Here's a quote. The PGO filed a petition to court to arrest the property of ex-Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, Zlochevsky, from which arrest was withdrawn, and other property he actually uses, namely housing estate with a total of 922 square meters, a land plot, blah, 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 a bunch of land and buildings. The petition was satisfied. You ready for this? February 2nd, 2016. Now, was this Sean Hannity? Is this from Hannity's website? Is this Rush Limbaugh's website? No. It's the official press agency of the Ukraine talking about official documents showing that Zlochevsky had his property seized on February 2nd by Viktor Shokin. Now let's go back to the New York Times. The investigation went dormant under Mr. Shokin. Wait a minute. February 2nd, 2016, they seized the property. Now, do you understand? Think about it in context of any investigation, like in the United States. One of the most serious steps in an investigation is seizing your assets and property. Imagine like an investigation into Bernie Madoff, and they freeze all of his assets and seize his home. Would you say, oh, the investigation's dormant? That freezing of assets, that's nothing. Of course not. You would say, wow, this is a significant step. Things are coming down the pipe. Now, let's look further into this at the timeline. February 2nd, 2016, right? This is from John Solomon, who's the man. He did awesome reporting on this. The Ukraine investigation of Hunter Biden's employer, Burisma Holdings, escalated in February 2nd, 2016, like I just showed you. This isn't John Solomon's opinion. I showed you the actual documents. When they raided the home and company of Zlochevsky and seized his property. Shokin was making plans in February 2016 to interview Hunter Biden as part of the investigation. He has sworn court depositions you could read. Now, you might say, oh, but Shokin's corrupt. How do we know? Well, who are you going to believe? The media that told you Shokin's investigation was dormant when clearly that's a lie, or Shokin himself? We know the media's lie. They called it an outright conspiracy theory. They said that this has all been settled. It's debunked. Part of what they're saying is the investigation was dormant. That's a lie. A small search on the internet. Some fat guy like me with no connection who's basically broke. I could find this information. Why couldn't the New York Times? Why can't Jake Tapper at CNN? Why can't Rachel Maddow at the MSNBC? It's almost like they don't want to report the truth. But fine, let's say don't believe Shokin, he's corrupt. So okay, we don't know if he was investigating Hunter Biden. Fair enough. We know he seized those assets though. And he claims he was about to interview Hunter Biden. Now, let's look at the next fact. That's February 2nd, 2016. Assets are seized. What happens next? Burisma's American representatives, because see the way this works, there are lawyers working for Burisma. This is the corrupt gas company that supposedly we had to fire Shokin for. Biden and Obama had to have a quid pro quo to fire Victor Shokin because he wasn't looking into Burisma and its owner Zlochevsky. That's their story, not mine. That's their story. Burisma has American attorneys. They lobbied the State Department. Whose State Department? Barack Obama's. In late February 2016 to help end the corruption allegations against the company and specifically invoked Hunter Biden's name as a reason to intervene. Do you get this? Do you see what's happening? So you're this corrupt guy, Zlochevsky, and you have this gas company. You hired Hunter Biden for some reason. We know the reason. Because you thought having Hunter Biden there would make sure that the Obama administration wouldn't bring the hammer down on you. That's why Hunter Biden was there getting paid huge sums of money. And Biden and Obama were totally willing to look the other way on the corruption of Burisma and Zlochevsky. Well, then what happens? Zlochevsky doesn't care. He doesn't care. All of a sudden, his property gets seized. Immediately upon his property getting seized, he puts his American lawyers to work. They contact Obama's State Department. Now remember, the Obama and Biden administration, they're claiming publicly that Burisma and Zlochevsky are corrupt. I read that to you in the New York Times article. So why would they be meeting with this corrupt oligarch's lawyers? Why would Obama's State Department meet with them? Is there any reason? Can you imagine if Trump was like, well, Vladimir Putin's lawyers wanted to meet with, us in secret? What do you think the media would say about that? But that's what Obama's State Department's doing. Now, is this just me and John Solomon, right? It's just us making stuff up, right? Here's the official state documents from the State Department. Blue Star Strategies, that's the name of the lawyers for Burisma. Karen Tramontano of Blue Star Strategies requested a meeting to discuss with U.S. Novelli USG remarks alleging Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company, of corruption. She noted that 2 high-profile U.S. citizens are affiliated with the company, including Hunter Biden. That's actual emails from the State Department of Obama. This corrupt company's lawyers call Obama's State Department and say, hey, is there anything you could do to stop this investigation? Why would they be contacting the State Department if the investigation was dormant? Right? The New York Times says Victor Shokin wasn't doing anything. So then why would the lawyers for Burisma be reaching out to try to stop an investigation? If nothing's happening, no need for these lawyers to be reaching out. But instead, Burisma's property gets seized, or the owner's property. And then the lawyers immediately reach out to the State Department. The State Department under Obama accepts this. What's the first thing that the lawyers say? Hey, can you end this corruption investigation? Hunter Biden works for us. Now, according to the media, what did the New York Times say? Outlandish conspiracy theories. That's what they said, right? I'm not reading you opinions from Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity or Rudy Giuliani. These are the facts. Undisputed. Just ignored. They're ignored and said, oh, it's all been debunked. That's what they do. That's not debunked. I just showed it to you. Can someone on the chat, I wish there were people here that were defending Biden in this. Could someone please explain to me, if Biden thinks this company's corrupt, and if the investigation into him is dormant, what the hell is the Obama administration doing meeting with their lawyers? I've yet to hear an explanation. I debated that YouTuber Destiny. All he said was, this has all been debunked. That's it. That's all anyone says. That's what the mainstream media says. Okay? Early February, property seized by Victor Shokin. Late February, the lawyers for Zlochevsky and Burisma, the company Hunter Biden's on the board of directors for, reach out to Obama's State Department. They say, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Can you drop this investigation? That's late February. What happens next? Joe Biden boasts in the 2018 videotape he forced Ukrainian's president to fire Shokin in March of 2016 by threatening to withhold $1 billion. Early February, assets of Zlochevsky seized. Late February, Zlochevsky's lawyers contact Obama's State Department, say, Hunter Biden works here. Can you help us stop this investigation? Not a month later, Biden personally goes to the Ukraine, tells them, if you don't fire Victor Shokin, we're withholding $1 billion. Can you get a more clear timeline of corruption? Why did Biden choose March to go? Right after Obama's State Department had been contacted by Burisma's lawyers. Right after they invoked his son's name. Why would he then immediately go and say, fire Victor Shokin? Now, he had to have access to the same information I just showed you, that Victor Shokin just seized the assets of Zlochevsky. Or is Biden going to claim, oh, I didn't know. Some fat guy in a chair named Rob Knorr that has a show called Normal America. He knows more than me. But I'm the expert on Ukrainian corruption. That's literally, you can't make this up. Next, the day that Shokin's firing was announced in March 2016, Burisma's legal representative sought an immediate meeting with his temporary replacement. Here's their emails, which you could click there. They're there. Burisma's legal representatives got that meeting April 6, 2016. Do you see the timeline? Look at how fast it worked for them. This corrupt oligarch, Obama and Biden call him corrupt. He gets his assets seized February 2nd, 2016. His legal team goes to the Obama administration, says, can you help us? They send Joe Biden the next month, who says, fire this guy that's looking into him. Okay, says the Ukraine. So they fire the guy. Then immediately these lawyers go to work with the next prosecutor. April 6th now. The day that Shokin got fired, they're on the phone trying to get a meeting with the new prosecutor. What does Burisma's, these are the lawyers for Burisma, the lawyers representing Hunter Biden's company that he's the board of directors of. What do they say? They told Ukrainian prosecutors that, quote, false information had been spread to justify Shokin's firing, according to the Ukrainian government memo about the meeting. In other words, they admit, yeah, it was lies that got Shokin fired. Now, why would they do this? People say, why would they do this? Why would people representing Joe Biden's son's interests lie about Joe Biden? What incentive do they have? This isn't Rudy Giuliani saying Joe Biden lied. It's lawyers for Joe Biden's son. Why would they make that up? What they were doing was telling the new prosecutor, who probably knew Victor Shokin, hey, we understand that that old guy got railroaded, because the new prosecutor would have known Shokin's not corrupt. So they're like, yeah, we know that was garbage. And then what do they say? The representatives offered to arrange for the remaining prosecutors to meet with the U.S. State Department. Obama's State Department. Who was that? George Kent, Yovanovitch, Fiona Hill, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. That's who they're going through. The same people that are witnesses saying, how dare Trump try to investigate this, they're the same people that were working to help Burisma. Now, this is all debunked conspiracy theory. So, I'm losing people, but I don't care. I like talking about this stuff. So hopefully those of you still here find this interesting. So let's go back to that New York Times article. Mr. Bolton described a 10-minute conversation. Over several pages, he lays out Trump's fixation on Ukraine and the president's belief, based on a mix of scattershot events, assertions, and outright conspiracy theories, that Ukraine tried to undermine its chances in 2016. Did you see any conspiracy theory there? Outright conspiracy theory? Anything that's been debunked? Nothing. Here's the end of the story. Who got the investigation into Burisma eventually? Remember, Joe Biden and Barack Obama say that Burisma and its founder, Zlochevsky, are guilty. That's what they said. They're corrupt, right? That's what the New York Times articles I showed you said. All of these Western leaders felt the same way. They just needed to get Shokin out of the way. Then the actual investigation into Zlochevsky would find him guilty. That's what they said. So they got Shokin out of the way. Where did the investigation land? It got to the NABU. What's the NABU? So, after the revolution that the U.S. backed to get former President Yanukovych ousted, they put in this guy, Poroshenko. Obama's sending Poroshenko billions of dollars. But there are conditions attached to that money. One of the conditions was they had to create basically an FBI, or an intelligence and investigative agency to investigate corruption. That was called the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine, or the NABU. The NABU was headed by a man by the name of Artem Sitnik. The NABU was routinely accused of burying investigations into Obama allies. Artem Sitnik went on to publicly say that he helped interfere in the 2016 election to help Hillary Clinton. So in other words, the NABU is the biggest ally of Obama and Biden that is in the Ukraine. So if it's true that Obama and Biden said Zlochevsky's corrupt, Shokin's the reason he's not being charged, they got their absolute dream prosecutor to finally be the one to make the decision on whether or not to charge Zlochevsky. So if I claim that someone was corrupt, and the only reason they weren't being charged with a crime is because the prosecutor was corrupt and not charging them, and I got that prosecutor fired, and then my buddy becomes the new prosecutor. So much so, my buddy, he's actually kind of bended the laws to help me in the past. I would say, finally, justice will be served, right? So no excuses. Zlochevsky's guilty. That's what Obama and Biden said. Finally, their prosecutor, their hand-picked prosecutor, gets the case, and they let Zlochevsky off the hook. How does that make any sense whatsoever? Why wasn't Obama and Biden furious? You mean this agency that we were allied with, that was supposed to be the anti-corruption agency, that was the linchpin, the contingent on us sending billions of dollars to this country, ends up itself being corrupt? And they didn't say a peep. Isn't that odd? I thought they were concerned about Zlochevsky's corruption. It's garbage. It's evident to see what happened. I don't know if Victor Shokin's a good guy or not. I don't know. But I know the investigation wasn't dormant. That's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I know without a doubt that Obama and Biden, regardless of what they wanted, would have rather had their allies in the NABU have the case. So as far as I'm concerned, the proof's in the pudding. If they wanted Zlochevsky charged and it got to the NABU, Zlochevsky would have been charged. So the fact that Zlochevsky wasn't charged seems to be a pretty clear indication to me that Biden and Obama didn't want Zlochevsky charged. And if they didn't want him charged, that's probably a good reason to get some guy that might charge him, Victor Shokin, out of the picture. Because if he is charged, then all of a sudden it's looking pretty bad for the Bidens and for the Democrats, isn't it? Next myth that they're debunking, conspiracy theories. Relationship between Ukraine and CrowdStrike. I'll go through this one fast. In 2016, DNC hired CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity firm, to investigate how hackers breached the DNC. Mr. Trump is fixated on CrowdStrike, saying that he has heard it's owned by a very rich Ukrainian. He has reportedly voiced this theory that the Ukraine, instead of or in addition to Russia, interfered in the 2016 election on behalf of the Democrats. They did. We know they did. Excuse me for a minute here. Let's go back here. It's his theory. His theory, remember, because they're dog whistling conspiracy theory, that instead of or in addition to Russia, Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election on behalf of Democrats. This is from the Financial Times. This isn't Rush Limbaugh. This isn't Sean Hannity. This isn't Fox News. This isn't Breitbart. Financial Times, something the Democrats would consider reputable, mainstream media outlet. August 28th, 2016. Let me just read you a little of this. Do you get that? August 28th, right before the election. Now remember, the media, the Democrats, academia, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley, they've told you that foreign election interference is the most serious thing possible. No stone unturned in investigating. Raid Trump's lawyer in the middle of the House. 3-year-long investigations. It's an act of war for a foreign government and foreign officials to interfere in our election. That's what we've been told, right? August 28, 2016, being reported in the mainstream media in the United States before the election. Let's see what's going on. For years, Sergei Lyshenko, a top Ukrainian anti-corruption manager, worked to expose kleptocracy under former President Yanukovych. Now he's focusing on a new perceived pro-Russian threat to the Ukraine, U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump. The prospect of Mr. Trump, who has praised Ukraine's archenemy Putin, becoming leader of the country's biggest ally, has spurred not just Mr. Lyshenko, but Kiev's wider political leadership to do something they would have never attempted before: intervene, however indirectly, in a U.S. election. Intervene in a U.S. election. Lyshenko and Kiev's wider political leadership intervene in an election. Mr. Lyshenko and Ukraine's Anti-Corruption Bureau, that's the NABU that I was just talking about, published a secret ledger this month that authorities claim show millions of dollars of off-the-book cash payments to Manafort, Trump's campaign manager. Quote, a Trump presidency would change the pro-Ukrainian agenda in American foreign policy, Mr. Lyshenko, an investigative journalist turned MP, told the Financial Times. For me, it's important to show not only the corruption aspect, but also that he's a pro-Russian candidate who could break the geopolitical balance in the world. In other words, he doesn't like Trump's policies. He wants a president of the United States that's going to continue to be aggressive towards Russia. So because he didn't like Trump's policies, he intervened with the wider Ukrainian political class and the Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine to help Hillary in the election. He's admitting it. Before the election, in August of 2016, in the mainstream media. What's the New York Times say about this? It's just a theory. It's debunked conspiracy theories. That's nonsense. It's publicly admitted. Why do the Democrats do this? You say Joe Biden admitted to a quid pro quo. What do they say? No. No. Don't believe your lying ears. Just because Joe Biden admitted it doesn't mean it's true. Now, simultaneously, you have to believe everything else Joe Biden says is true. But he was lying when he admitted to the quid pro quo. Or how about Ukrainian officials admitting to intervening in the election to help Hillary? No. You can't believe them. You can't believe their words. I mean, this is insanity. It is still to this day. I kid you not. I did a video on Jake Tapper a month ago doing this. To this day, the official story of the mainstream media, the Democrat Party, the academia, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley, the official story is it is a debunked conspiracy theory to say that Ukrainians interfered in the election. They're admitting it before the election. In the Financial Times. When will Trump audit the Fed? Yeah, he should. I agree with you there. And the Fed will screw Trump over in the future, as I was saying on the Patriot Hour show. It's going to happen. They're going to collapse the economy probably before the election. And Trump, he shouldn't have let these people have so much power. Now, back on this. In a call with Zelensky, Trump suggested the company had moved a hacked DNC server to the Ukraine. The server, they say Ukraine has it, Trump said. There's no evidence to support Trump's assertion, which has spread widely online. CrowdStrike's based in California and is not Ukrainian-owned and does not appear to have any Ukrainian connections. There's no evidence to suggest that CrowdStrike conspired to hide a compromised server in Ukraine. The earliest conjectures was on the message board 4chan in March 2017, according to BuzzFeed. Less than a week later, they wound their way on Reddit. Until Mr. Trump's statement, even internet speculation did not assert CrowdStrike was owned by a Ukrainian. CrowdStrike's co-founder, Dmitry Alperovich, is a Russian-born U.S. citizen who spent all of his adult life in the United States and has no connection with Ukraine. CrowdStrike concluded that two espionage groups connected to Russia were responsible for the DNC breach. The Justice Department and the FBI, after conducting their own investigations, confirmed Russia hacked the emails. There was no single server, and there was no indication that the company moved one to Ukraine. Mr. Trump's former Homeland Security Bossert called the president's assertion that Ukraine intervened in the election on behalf of the Democrats not only a conspiracy theory, but completely debunked. So let's focus on that last section. That's a lie, as I just showed you. Who was the head of the NABU, right? Artem Sitnik. That's the head of the NABU, right? I want to play something for you. Here's Artem Sitnik. Remember, did you see what just said? Well, I showed you this article saying Lyshenko said, I worked with the Anti-Corruption Bureau and the wider political class in Ukraine to intervene for Hillary. That's what they admitted. That's before the election, that admission. The New York Times says, even Trump's Homeland Security head, Bossert, said it's a conspiracy theory and completely debunked. So he's saying we can't believe Lyshenko's own words. Now, the NABU, the same group that got the investigation into Burisma and Zlochevsky and Hunter Biden, the same group, here's the head of it. I'm going to play some audio for you. Listen to this.
First of all, in April, former Prosecutor General Lyshenko, the good guy, remember, that came in after the bad guy was taken out? He decides to give an interview with Ukrainian media. And in that interview, he makes a stunning comment. Quote, I don't know how, but the Americans got an audio recording of Mr., how do you say his name? Sitnik, of his conversation. Now, that's the guy who ran the Anti-Corruption Bureau. He was resting with his family and friends now and discussing how he'd like to help Hillary. So the guy who was in charge of the anti-corruption, they caught him on tape talking about how he'd like to. Well, let me play it for you. Now, this is the first time, strange because it's been out in the newspapers in Ukraine. This is the first time that we know of that this has been translated by anyone in the media in English. I just want you to listen. Now, the speaker you're going to hear is Director Sitnik, and this is what he said. Listen.
Ну, ваше.
Я думаю, що так.
Да?
Я ж йому теж не йому, а Хіларі допомагав.
Тоді ви там трошки шатнули, да.
Я це так пишуть там.
Ну, мені кажется, Хіларі погано було відбігла.
Let me go back. I realized
Clinton.
I had the camera.
Я думаю, що так.
Sending
Я ж
says
йому теж не йому, а Хіларі допомагав.
Тоді ви там трошки
he helped Hillary.
шатнули,
That's what he says.
Я це так пишуть там.
Ну, мені кажется, Хіларі погано було відбігла.
Wow, Clinton Foundation.
Ну, я наскільки пам'ятаю, ви говорили, що для нас навіть не було близько.
Ні, Трамп же ж він чисто в нього внутрішні питання домінують над зовнішніми. А Хіларі це якби це із тих політиків, що вони гегемонія Америки в світі. Для нас якби це так лучше. А для американців лучше так. Це те, що Трамп робить.
У нас зараз ці американські спортовці, баба, мужик.
Ми ж оприлюднили дані про Манафорта, якого посадили. Манафорт ж був керівник цього виборчого штабу Трампа.
See that?
Маленької дискусії.
Ну, я ж тоді це сторонив, зараз, в тому числі за те, що проводили початку бухгалтерію, посадили там, що 80 років переповнювали. І Трамп для Трампа барабан, тому що у них система працює чітко.
Система хороша.
І коли це були вибори, за неділю до виборів, FBI поновили розслідування відносно Хіларі. В неї рейтинг попав на 7%, і Трамп натяжкою перебіг. Я так не можу зрозуміти, що Трамп воює з FBI, і кажуть, що його доганяють. Якби не FBI, то він би не був президентом. Вони Хіларі погасили рейтинг на 7%.
Wow, that seems pretty kind of wow.
Did you get what he said there? I think everyone could hear the audio, right? But if not, you could at least see what was being said. Hey, Duke, Umpire Post, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate it. Did you see that? That's the head of the NABU. What was the NABU? It was the agency that was set up with the help of Obama. The head of the NABU admitting right out of the gate, yes, I interfered to help Hillary. Admitting it. So now we have a parliamentarian named Lashenko saying, I worked with the head of the NABU, or I worked with the NABU to intervene in the election to help Hillary. We have the head of the NABU saying, yes, I interfered to help Hillary. Yes, I released this black book. Yes, it was effective. Notice, as a side note, did you see he said, see, Hillary's out for the world order, basically, but Trump's out for the American people. He knows. The world knows. They know what's going on. They know what the globalists are about. But he admits to interfering in the election to help Hillary. What did Trump's former Secretary of Homeland Security say? The assertion that Ukraine intervened in the 2016 election on behalf of the Democrats is a conspiracy theory and completely debunked. So I have to believe this guy and Jake Tapper and Rachel Maddow instead of the actual Ukrainians admitting, yes, we interfered. I can't let, that's debunked. Their own admission is debunked. It's what they're saying. Now, were we told over and over again, were we not told that interfering in the election is an act of war for a foreign government to interfere in the election? That's what we were told, right? We were told no stone unturned. Here we have at least two high-level officials in Ukraine admitting that they interfered in the election to help Hillary. And the Democrats and even people in Trump's cabinet are saying that's debunked. That's been debunked. What about the State Department? You know, those noble people that are testifying against Trump in the impeachment hearings. Your George Kents, your Fiona Hills, your Yovanovitches, your Lieutenant Colonel Vindmans. What about them? This is closed-door testimony of George Kent, the very first witness from October 15, 2019. This is the very first witness that was televised. George Kent. Remember, he was appalled that Yovanovitch got fired. There was a prosecutor that came in the interim. His name was Lutsenko, not to be confused with Lyshenko, the guy who was admitting to interfering in the election. Lutsenko accused people in Obama's State Department, including Yovanovitch, of telling him that he wasn't allowed to go after certain Obama-connected people. This is page 70 of the closed-door testimony from this October 15th, 2019. George Kent. George Kent said it was all a lie. Lutsenko's a big liar. They never pressured Lutsenko to drop any investigations. Let's see what he says. Question. At any point in time were the names of officials, whether it was for any reason, shared with the prosecutor's office in connection with do not prosecute? Answer. This is from George Kent. Well, again, we don't go in and say do not prosecute. The types of conversations we have might be construed are different. Question. You mentioned the name Sitnik earlier. Who's Sitnik? The head of the NABU that you just heard on that Glenn Beck clip admit to interfering in the election to help Hillary. Now, Sitnik was later investigated and charged with corruptly interfering in the 2016 election by a Ukrainian court. So the Ukrainian officials were investigating their head of their FBI, the NABU they call it, for corruptly interfering in the U.S. election. The question to George Kent. Did you tell them not to prosecute Sitnik, the guy who was interfering in the 2016 election? Kent says Artem Sitnik, who is still and the first head of the so-called NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine. Question, and was he ever in the crosshairs of Lutsenko? Answer from George Kent, yes, he was. Was he being investigated? George Kent says, to the best of my knowledge, yes. There were open prosecutor general investigations on Mr. Sitnik. Question, do you know if anyone in the embassy ever asked Lutsenko to investigate Sitnik? Not to investigate Sitnik. Now I want you to see what George Kent says here. This isn't Rush Limbaugh. This isn't Sean Hannity. This is a transcript from his testimony under oath in the impeachment hearings, the closed-door testimony. Did anybody tell Ukrainian prosecutor Lutsenko not to prosecute Sitnik, the guy who was admitting to interfering in the 2016 election to help Democrats? Here's what George Kent says, the first witness against Trump in impeachment. Kent says, quote, what I would say, I would characterize the interactions as different because what we warned both Lutsenko and others, the efforts to destroy the NABU as an organization, including opening up investigations of Sitnik, threatened to unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation, which had started at the request of Petro Poroshenko. Do you see what he just said? Now there's a guy who's been accused, who's publicly admitted, yes, I interfered in the election to help Hillary. This isn't Joe Schmo Ukrainian, the head of their FBI, their James Comey, admitting, yes, I interfered to help Hillary Clinton in the election. Admits it, right? Ukraine, not the United States. The Obama administration, no one in the State Department under Obama or the holdovers once Trump was there, none of them wanted an investigation into Sitnik. So it was the Ukrainian government that was seeking to out corruption. They started to investigate. Okay? Now, George Kent told us all in the open door testimony, oh, Lutsenko's a liar. Yovanovitch was a saint. Trump shouldn't have fired Yovanovitch. No one told Lutsenko not to prosecute people. That's what he said for me and you to hear. But in the closed door testimony, he said something a little different, didn't he? Where were the Republicans to call him out? Nowhere. Now let's look carefully at what he said, word by word. He says, what I would say, I would characterize the interactions as different. In other words, he's saying, well, we didn't tell him not to prosecute. Instead, we warned both Lutsenko, their head prosecutor, and other prosecutors the efforts to destroy the NABU, including opening up investigations into its leader, Sitnik. Remember, the guy who admitted to interfering in the election to help the Democrats. So here we have an Obama lackey telling the Ukrainian government, don't you dare look into the people that were interfering to help Obama and the Democrats. Don't do it. So if they investigated Sitnik, listen to what he says closely. It threatened to unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation. What was the anti-corruption cooperation? Anyone? The billions of dollars we were sending them to fund the NABU. That's what the whole, remember I told you at the very outset, when the U.S. helped Ukraine have this revolution to overthrow former President Yanukovych, they brought in the next guy, the corrupt guy, Poroshenko, and they started giving Poroshenko billions of dollars. But the condition was you have to start an anti-corruption bureau. Remember I told you that? Now we have George Kent saying, hey, that cooperation we're giving you with anti-corruption, you know, that $1 billion, you're going to jeopardize it if you investigate the guy that helped the Democrats win the 2016 election. None of that's a conspiracy theory. None of it. I played you the audio. Sitnik admitted to interfering. I showed you the official transcript of George Kent, of him saying, yes, we told Litsenko and other prosecutors, do not prosecute or investigate this guy, or it'll jeopardize our corruption. What do you call that? What do you say? If you do X, then we'll do Y. What is that? Well, one might call that a quid pro quo, wouldn't they? If you like this billions of dollars you're getting sent, you better not investigate our ally. And if you do, it'll jeopardize that billions of dollars coming. The exact same thing they're accusing Trump of. That's what the State Department officials that are testifying against Trump because they're outraged that a quid pro quo would be used to interfere in the Ukraine's legal system themselves are covering up that they issued a quid pro quo to interfere in Ukraine's legal system. Just like the Democrats accused Trump of committing a crime by saying he tried to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, and so they attempted to prove that by getting dirt on Trump from Russians. Every single time what they accused Trump of doing is what they did. Every single time. Now, George Kent, I watched the testimony. I watched the testimony of Kent and Vindman and Fiona Hill and Yovanovitch. I watched all four of them their testimony in the open door. Because understand, this was, remember, Adam Schiff interviewed like 17, 18 witnesses in closed door sessions. Then he leaked out what he wanted, right? Then they had the open door testimony. So they brought back some of those witnesses. This was Kent, page 70 from the closed door testimony. Don't take my word for it. It's page 70. I'll put the link. Read it yourself. Now, I watched the testimony. I watched it. I watched George Kent himself say, Litsenko's a liar. No one ever told him not to prosecute people. I watched that happen. And I'm screaming like, why aren't the Republicans saying, wait a minute, you testified in closed door hearings. You did tell them not to prosecute. And it wasn't just Sitnik. It was also Leshchenko they told not to prosecute. It was also a guy by the name of Shabunian, who is the head of the Anti-Corruption Action Center, a Soros-Obama joint-funded agency in Ukraine. Our State Department officials are admitting we pressured the Ukraine to not investigate Obama allies. They're admitting it. At the same time, their argument is, how dare Trump try to pressure the Ukraine into their investigations? So I hope everyone's following me. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of this New York Times. You can see, though, that's what they're calling conspiracy theories, things like that. Weren't we told that foreign election interference is like the biggest deal ever? Weren't we told that? Now, what did I just outline to you? Two things. Ukrainian election interference, that's what I just did, right? I challenge anyone out there. I don't care if you're a member of the Democratic Party, if you're just a regular guy like me, anyone. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me where it's been debunked that Ukrainians interfered in the 2016 election. We have at least two of them publicly admitting it. We have admitted. Can you imagine? Imagine the scandal, right? Imagine the scandal if people working under Donald Trump came out in testimony and said, yeah, so there was this Russian guy that was being investigated for interfering in the U.S. election to help Trump. And we told the Russians, listen, we're not going to cooperate with you anymore unless you stop prosecuting or stop investigating that guy that interfered to help Trump. Imagine the outrage. Who do we have that, who was it that supposedly, that's the other part I wanted to get to. But real quick, has any Russian admitted to interfering in the election to help Trump? No, we just have the corrupt FBI's word for it. You know, the same FBI that couldn't be bothered to look at the physical servers. But take their word. I mean, they're so corrupt, inept, if we listen to the Democrats. The FBI, the same agency tasked with saying, yep, Russia hacked the DNC. That same agency that didn't get the server, that instead just got redacted information from CrowdStrike, a paid company, private company that the Democrats paid for. They relied on that redacted information. Didn't bother to get the physical server, right? That same FBI, the same agency the Democrats tell us are so incompetent, they didn't know that they weren't supposed to change evidence to say the opposite of what it said to spy on Donald Trump. They didn't know. They didn't know that. Oh, you mean we're not supposed to tamper with evidence to make it say the opposite of what it does? Oh, our bad. Just incompetence. Cool. Those same people that were so dumb, according to the Democrats, they didn't know you weren't supposed to change evidence to say the opposite of what it says. So, like, if you get a fingerprint on a gun and it shows that you're not the criminal and they change the fingerprint to say you are the criminal, that's pretty big incompetence. I would call it corruption, but the Democrats and the media and the FBI, they call it incompetence. Those same people that didn't know not to change the fingerprint, that didn't know not to change an email that said, actually, Carter Page was an asset of the CIA, to say he was not an asset of the CIA, that same agency, we have to take their word when it comes to the Russian hack. We don't have one Russian that admitted to interfering in the election to help Trump, but we have two Ukrainians that admitted to interfering to help Hillary. We don't have any evidence that the interference to help Trump did anything, but we know for a fact that the interference against Trump led to the firing of Manafort. The New York Times, all of this has been debunked. Please. I don't believe word one the FBI says. Have you seen any proof that Russia hacked the DNC server? Anything? I haven't. I've just heard the FBI say, well, I heard James Comey testify. We wanted to get access to the physical server, but the DNC told us no. Huh, isn't that odd? Now, if you're the DNC and you're literally saying it was an act of war by Russia that stole the most consequential election away from you, that's the argument the DNC was making. Why in God's name wouldn't you give the FBI every tool at their disposal to make sure this doesn't happen again? Instead, you say, no, you're not allowed to see our server. It's garbage. Then CrowdStrike, the same group that came to the conclusion, yep, it was Russia. Remember, a month after that, Ukraine was hacked. And CrowdStrike did the investigation and said, yep, it was Russia. Only then, Ukraine did what, the United States, a first world country, should do. They did their own investigation, looked at the physical server themselves, and came to the conclusion that CrowdStrike was wrong. Our FBI couldn't be bothered with that. Remember when they told you 17 intel agencies all agree? They all agree that Russia interfered. Remember that? And then it turned out it was 3. And then it turned out it was really just Brennan and the other agencies were repeating him. Remember that? Doesn't that sound a lot like, oh, the intel agency said it was Russia that hacked? Show me the proof. Let's see it. You mean the same intel agencies that also told me that Assad dropped sarin gas on his people that ended up being a lie? That talked about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? That said that we needed to go wipe Gaddafi out in Libya and things would be better? That have been wrong every single time? The same intel agencies that have no clue what the Las Vegas shooter was about? Those agencies that didn't know that you're not supposed to forge evidence to say the opposite of what it does? That broke protocol 17 times to spy on Trump? But I have to take their word for it. It's a debunked conspiracy theory. That's the debunked conspiracy theories that we're talking about. But put that one aside. I showed you Ukrainian election interference. I showed it to you. It is not up for debate. It is blatant. Now, I could show you clip after clip after clip after clip of Democrats, even Schiff at the impeachment testimony in his closing remarks. The Republicans are just talking about debunked conspiracy theories that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election. We have them on tape saying they did. That's not debunked. You just saying it's debunked, and then CNN saying, yeah, it's debunked, and then the New York Times saying, yep, it's debunked, and then MSNBC saying, yep, it's debunked. That doesn't prove it's debunked. That proves you're all corrupt. It's what it proves. The arrogance is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's the same with the Biden's corruption. Now, I'm being as honest as I can. Can I sit here and tell you that Joe Biden was corrupt in his quid pro quo? I can't say for certain. Why? Because there hasn't even been an investigation. Now, I could outline a pretty damn convincing circumstantial case as to why he's full of it. Certainly more than enough for an investigation. So can someone explain to me if the argument in 2016, when Obama and Biden issued their quid pro quo, if that was acceptable because we don't want to give money to corrupt countries, right? That's what we were told. That's why it was accepted. Because remember, everyone's saying now, the Democrats, oh, if Congress votes for it, then it has to go. It's that simple. If Congress voted for the aid, then it has to be sent. Any reason that Trump would have withheld, it's illegal. Okay, what about Obama? Oh, that was different. That's different because that was to fight corruption. We didn't want to give money to a corrupt country. Okay, if that's the argument, why in God's name isn't the same benefit of the doubt given to Trump? There's way more evidence that what Biden, Hunter Biden, etc. did was corrupt than that Victor Shokin was corrupt. Way more evidence. Exactly, Crocker. Exactly. That's the threshold we have to meet. I don't have to prove, neither does Trump, that Joe or Hunter Biden are guilty. I merely have to prove that there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation. If there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation, the Democrats and the media have shown us through all of their actions, since Trump came down that escalator, that, hey, it's our duty to investigate these things. They want the double standard. This impeachment is about making it illegal to investigate the corruption of the Democrats and the establishment. That's the baseline, what it's about. We can investigate any outsider for anything we want constantly. We could raid your office in the middle of the night. We could come with AR-15s pointed at your face and drag you out in front of your wife in your underwear, like Roger Stone. We could tip off CNN to make sure they're there to film it to humiliate you when it happens. We could put you in solitary confinement. We could bankrupt you based on allegations. We could say that you didn't lying or innocent and then change our mind like they did with Flynn to bankrupt him and ruin his life. All of that. They could do all of that. They could investigate crimes that you committed 12 years ago. They could leak your tax returns to the press. They could leak details of the investigation to their press allies to smear you. They could unmask people. They could get illegal FISA warrants to spy on you and everyone connected to you. All of that's acceptable. All of it. But if you want to even ask another country, hey, did that other administration do something corrupt? Bam! All of a sudden you're guilty of a crime. How in God's name, at the exact same time that news is breaking that the FBI broke the law to spy on the President of the United States, the media lied about it for 3 years, at the exact same time that story's breaking, the big story in the world is, did Trump ask a Ukrainian president if Biden committed a crime? Who gives a shit what Ukraine did? Our own intel agency, the most powerful in the history of the world, is corrupt. That's unbelievable. And no one cares. Where are the Republicans? I care? Is that it? It's unbelievable. Do you think for a minute, if George Bush's FBI had been spying on Barack Obama in the exact same way we know that the FBI did to Trump, do you think for a minute it wouldn't have been the biggest story in the world? 1,000 times more egregious than Watergate. 1,000. And no one in the media cares. The corruption is staggering. It's unbelievable. Now, why does this matter, right? I hear that. Well, the coronavirus, someone said that on the Patriot Hours that I was on. Sorry if I'm getting a little heated, but it infuriates me. Trump runs the DOD, who has to certify that the country is doing enough to fight corruption. Yeah, I agree with you, Crocker. I've said it from the get-go. If Trump doesn't hold people like Comey responsible, and Brennan and Clapper and Baker and Rosenstein and Rebecca and all the rest of the heads of these intel agencies that did this, if he does not actively pursue criminal charges against them, he has no one to blame but himself when they continue to screw him over. I agree with you 100%. I've said it from the get-go. You should have saw me. You think I'm screaming now? You should have saw me on here when the IG recommended criminal charges against Comey and Barr declined. I was infuriated. And then I have these people say, oh, yes, but Q says that this is all part of the bigger game. I don't care. Well, they'll get Comey on bigger charges. Then how about charge him on the ones we could prove right now and then continue to charge him on the bigger charges? How about that? Instead, the IG report comes out that shows more corruption than could ever be imagined at the FBI to spy on a president of the United States. What did the head of the FBI, Comey, do? What did Baker, one of the heads, do? They celebrated. They were demanding apologies. Imagine that you get a review at your work that's like, you're incredibly corrupt, you're incredibly inept. Oh, you handpicked a team that failed over and over and over again. You broke protocol constantly, and you actually have the nerve to come out and say, yep, I'm the man. I did it. Everybody owes me an apology. I told you I was great. And the media's like, yes, yes. And why wouldn't Comey come out and do that? He's right to do it. He's right to come out and celebrate. The evidence of his corruption's blatant. He was actually criminally referred, and Trump's team did nothing. Of course he should be celebrating. Why not? Does anyone who goes against Trump ever get punished for anything? Nope. Those leaks, remember we hear about that every once in a while. You'll have some Republican be like, they'll bring someone on like Rosenstein and they'll be like, and by the way, the constant leaks against Trump is, if you find out who any of them are, oh yeah, we're still looking into that. We'll get to that someday. They'll throw some low-level person under the bus once in a while, but that's it. I saw that Invader Zim. It was before the Virginia rally, but yeah, they went over 100 miles to investigate someone who did a video that was going to attend the Virginia rally. It's ridiculous. Now, what I was getting to was, before I start yelling again. Why does this matter? Let's say, for sake of argument, the coronavirus is going to wipe out 60 million people. I don't know that it will. I have no clue. One of the reasons I haven't talked a lot about the coronavirus is I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I don't know what to say about it. But let's just say the worst estimates that I've seen, pandemic could affect 60 million people. Why does impeachment matter in that world? Why does FBI corruption or Democrat corruption or media corruption matter in that world? Where are you going to get your information from the coronavirus from? If there are quarantines, who's going to do it? Is it going to be me? It's going to be some person way smarter than me that's a medical professional that's on YouTube telling you stuff? Is it going to be your doctor? No, it's going to be the government, isn't it? The problem with having a corrupt, incompetent, disgusting government that has no interest in the people and instead is only interested in being corrupt, liar, propagandists that want to consolidate power for themselves is that sometimes it would be nice to not have a corrupt government. Like when a pandemic's hitting. Can you trust the same federal government that didn't know they weren't supposed to change evidence to spy on Donald Trump's campaign and presidential team? Can you trust them to keep you safe from a virus? I don't know. Where am I going to get my information from? The same people that tell me Epstein killed himself, that he tried to kill himself 2 weeks before he did, but the tape of that's mysteriously disappeared, and then for some reason he wasn't on suicide watch, and then for some reason the two guards appointed to watch him were both asleep, and then for some reason there were no cameras on the inside of the cell, and for some reason the lignature marks don't match up at all with the supposed noose that they found in the cell, and for some reason the cameras outside, at least two of them, both malfunctioned at the exact same time of his suicide. But he killed himself. The same people that tell me that are the people that are going to give me advice on how to keep myself safe from the coronavirus. So when I get mocked by people saying, oh, the people that listen to you, they're tinfoil hat. You're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. You believe in conspiracy theories. Dude, if you believe the official stories from our FBI, from our government and our intel agencies after that crap, you believe in such a ridiculous conspiracy theory that you can't even make fun of flat earthers. That's how absurd that conspiracy theory is. I say this all the time. If our government is corrupt, if it is ran by a deep state, behind the scene people that are willing to do things like take down by any means necessary candidates that they don't like, or presidents or elected officials they don't like, it doesn't matter what your issue you're concerned with is. It doesn't matter. And I truly mean this. I know people think, oh, you're just a Trump supporter, or oh, you're just a conservative. It doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. Yes, if you're really a conservative and you're concerned about things like the border wall and illegal immigration, or you're concerned about things like deficit spending and why it's bad, your issue doesn't matter because the FBI, the intel agencies, the deep state, they're not going to let someone in there that could actually fix it if they're allowed to take down Trump like this. But let's say you're on the left. Let's say you don't care about any of those issues. Let's say you're concerned with LGBT rights. Let's say you're concerned with environmentalism or climate change. Guess what? It's the exact same problem, isn't it? You better hope that the deep state agrees with you, because if not, they're not going to let someone in there that addresses those problems. That's why we have to come together on the left and the right to say, this is ridiculous. The corruption must end. Adam Schiff gets on TV almost every day. He's the House impeachment manager. He lies every day. How many times in the impeachment hearing in the Senate alone has he lied about what Trump said? He did it just again yesterday. He gets caught. He says that as a parody. The hubris is unbelievable. Nothing is ever done to him. Nunez was under an ethics investigation because supposedly he was engaged in all sorts of corruption revolving around the FBI and their investigation into Trump. Now we know that Nunez, who had access to the exact same information that Schiff had, Nunez was 100% right, and Schiff lied to us. Yet no ethics investigation of Schiff. Why is that? Schiff's demanding more witnesses. Yet the 18th witness that was interviewed under closed-door testimony was the Inspector General the Intelligence Community Inspector General, a man by the name of Atkinson. For some reason, Schiff won't release that testimony. Now, wait a minute. I thought the media and the Democrats in the entertainment industry and academia and Silicon Valley, didn't they all tell us, all witnesses should be allowed? Anyone trying to withhold information is hiding something. Well, we already had the 18th witness. Why can't we hear from them? Oh, because they didn't say what Schiff liked. Because they pointed out that whistleblower's original story was garbage. Because they pointed out all sorts of strenuous connections between Schiff and the whistleblower. So now that has to be hidden from us. Every single thing is connected to that corruption. Everything. And I know, I have friends that are like, hey, Rob, I like when you're talking about like socialism not being good, or I like when you're talking about gun rights. But do you really have to keep harping on this corruption stuff? I mean, yes, to me, it's the biggest issue. Yes, I get passionate about it because I have just the slightest understanding of what this country's about. Not more than an average person. I never fought. I'm not a veteran, right? But we were given something special. They talk about privilege. The social justice warriors talk about privilege all the time. I don't care what skin color you are, or what gender you are, or how much money you have. If you're born in the United States and you're alive at this time in the United States, you're one of the most privileged people to ever walk the face of the earth. And I think that the people that, from those that fought in wars to those that worked in factories for pennies a day, every person that came before us, the slaves that were treated like crap, and then many which got freed and didn't seek retribution, but instead sought to prove that they could run their own lives. All of these great people over the founding fathers, all of the great people that came before me, and we're going to piss it away because of James Comey and Adam Schiff? Not in my watch. Now, I'm not advocating violence. One, it's immoral, and second, it's not strategic anyways. The battle will be fought, the war will be won through information. That's why you could tell based on what your opponent's doing what is effective. This is what I tried to tell the people that were complaining about the Virginia rally. Why didn't they go in there guns a-blazing? Did you see how desperate the media was to make it seem violent? Why do you think they did that? Do you think they're that dumb? That if it would have been violent, it would have been a win? Of course not. They know that that's strategic. They know that the battleground is the millions upon millions of people that are ignorant of the situation right now. They need to be maintained, kept ignorant, or taken to the side of the establishment. If those people wake up and see how corrupt this is, they will lose. The reason prosecutions don't happen is because there's not enough of a public outcry right now. So they're allowed to get away with it. That's why Schiff's allowed to do what he wants. Why is there so many ignorant people? Because the information war. Because the mainstream media and academia and the entertainment industry and Silicon Valley, all of the agencies, all of the institutions that set the public narrative are controlled by the establishment. That's why they need to censor us. That's why I do this. That's why I try to make it as simple as possible, even though I'm long-winded and I yell and, I'm trying my best. I am. I was sick this week. I'm trying to put out more material. I'm trying to get out there and do stuff, But I mean it. When I do home health care, I'm literally at work half the week. And I mean literally. I go in Sunday night. I don't get back until Thursday evening. I have no money. I'm broke. It's a joke. I tried to run for Congress. I'm going to try to do more. Now, am I saying I'm some hero? I want some pat in the back? Absolutely not. But I'm just saying that's why I'm passionate about it. I am trying to do something. That's why they need to censor people like me. And not just me. You might be more left-wing than me. That's okay. Your voice is important too. Wouldn't it be nice to have two parties that actually care about the people, that weren't corrupt, and then we could discuss economic policies and healthcare policies? And I might disagree with you. Maybe you're more left-wing than me, but at least I could say, you know what? Even if that person wins the election or their idea wins the election, at least I could trust they actually care about people. But not now. So that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you, Big Sky Crypto. Some people tell me they don't like when I yell. Yeah, Umpire's Post, thank you. Yeah, I mean, who said it? One of the founding fathers. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, the United States is so powerful, it will not be taken down from outside powers. It will be taken down from within. I mean, we have people openly running for Congress that hate the United States. That's what the squad's about. In some ways, though, at least AOC's honest. At least they're honest about their hatred. That's in some ways more admirable than the James Comeys of the world that pretend to care about the people in the country. In reality, they don't care at all. They're corrupt. Yeah, thank you, The Groove. So there's a link to my PayPal and to Patreon on the description of this video. And you can donate there. So for those of you, if you're also interested in something like that, I need 350 more hours watched, and then I'll be able to monetize, which I really don't know if I will monetize. I might, I don't know, but we'll see what it does with ads, because I don't like the ads. But at least then I'll be able to do the super chat, and which would go straight to my PayPal, so that might come out. Thank you, Dean. I really like Mark Levin. He is one of the good ones. But yeah, so if you go to the description on this video or almost any of my other ones, there'll be a link to my PayPal and to Patreon. Also a link to my BitChute account and Twitter. But I will wrap up here shortly. What's going to happen with impeachment today? They'll probably vote no witnesses. Remember, if you could take things away from this, the claim that all of this stuff is debunked is a joke. It is corrupt. I hope I outlined that case successfully. Secondly, do not be confused because Murkowski and Susan Collins or whoever are going to vote against witnesses and vote to exonerate Trump. If they had the ability to, if there was enough public perception they thought they could have kept their job, they would have thrown Trump under the bus immediately. So vote them out anyways. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. And the third thing is always, thank you, Heidi, that I recommend. And this is something I did the Patriot Hours show this morning. We had some connection issues at the end. But one of the things that he says that he made me a huge fan immediately. Don't believe me because I'm talking on YouTube. And he says the same about him. Don't believe him because verify the information yourself. I'm giving you a perspective. I think that I do a good job. I think that I'm truthful. But I'm biased. I'll fully admit it. Talk to people that disagree with you. I 100% agree with that. I try to debate people. I try to bring people on. That's what I want to do. But don't just take my word for something. Go out there yourself. And more, even beyond that, make your own YouTube channel. If you're not good at talking or you don't want to do a YouTube channel, there's always things you could do to help get this message out. I really, really mean this. I really do. When you look at the people that you respect in life and that you want to emulate, it's not people that say the right things. It's people that do the right things. And so let people know what you believe. Don't push them. Don't get in a fight with them. But by your actions, by being a good person, by being a happy person, by having fun, by being a truth teller, eventually we'll win this battle. We will. So that's my advice. But as always, thank all of you for being here. I really appreciate it. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. I might be a little lax tomorrow. I don't know who's watching me, if I have any family. I have something going on tomorrow. So it's just a secret thing, but it'll be fun. And, so I don't know how long I'll be doing that. Sunday though, I will be back on the Patriot Hour show, taking call-ins there. So I'll make sure I put a video up or a post letting you know where to see that. Oh my God. yelling too much, losing my voice again. And I'll be trying to put more material out. I'll be on the Patriot panel Monday as well. As always, do my live stream Tuesday night at 11 p.m. So, yeah, look for me there. No, that's real wood. That's not paneling, BD. Nice seeing you, though. So, thank you so much, everyone. I really am. I'm humbled that you listen to me. I really am. If you haven't, like and subscribe, and please recommend me to someone else. Really, it does. It makes a difference. I'm trying my best to get a bigger audience and hopefully get my message out there. But you guys are great as always. I'm going to go clean up before my wife gets here so she thinks I actually cleaned around the house today. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a good one.